Have you ever wondered if the person you see in the mirror could one day become someone completely different, someone who might hurt others without a second thought? Welcome to the Lucifer Effect, where we explore how everyday people walk a very thin line between doing good and doing harm, and how even the smallest choices can sometimes lead us down a dark path. You're here because you've sensed that human nature is more complex than the simple labels of good and evil suggest. Perhaps you've questioned how someone who does the right thing day in and day out can suddenly commit acts that defy every moral standard. In the next journey of roughly 2,000 words, we will uncover the dark corridors of the human psyche, drawing upon history, psychology, philosophy, and real-life events to reveal how situational forces, rather than inherent evil, can push even the most upstanding individuals over the edge. By the end of our exploration, you'll understand the subtle process that transforms everyday decisions into pathways toward cruelty. You'll learn how factors like obedience, de-individuation, and dehumanization create a climate where the line between hero and monster is frighteningly thin. And most importantly, you'll gain insights on how to recognize and resist these forces in your own life, empowering you to choose compassion over conformity. At first glance, you might assume that monsters are born, not made. But history and science tell a different story. A story of ordinary people who, when placed in extraordinary circumstances, have committed unimaginable acts. This is the crux of the Lucifer Effect. In 1971, a group of college students volunteered for what they believed was a study on prison life. Randomly assigned as either guards or prisoners, the students soon found themselves swept up in a reality that blurred moral boundaries. Within only 6 days, the guards began to exhibit cruel behavior, enforcing rules with an intensity that was less about maintaining order and more about asserting dominance. It wasn't that these young men were inherently sadistic. They were simply reacting to an environment that stripped away their individuality and empathy. This experiment wasn't just about a simulated prison, it was a revelation, as it showed us that under the right conditions, the structures around us, uniforms, roles, the physical environment, can fundamentally alter how we behave. Ordinary individuals, when given power and anonymity, can quickly slip into roles that allow them to commit acts of cruelty they might never consider under normal circumstances. Imagine being in a laboratory instructed by an authoritative figure to administer increasingly severe electric shocks to a stranger. This wasn't a scene from a dystopian film. It was a groundbreaking psychological study. In the Milgram experiment, over 65% of participants complied with instructions to deliver shocks that they believed were dangerous. This wasn't because they were innately evil, it was because the authority figure's orders overrode their personal sense of morality. These experiments force us to confront a disturbing possibility that the forces shaping our behavior can be so powerful, they override even the strongest moral convictions. They challenge our belief that we are always in control of our actions, and they highlight how context can drive us to do things that seem fundamentally at odds with our self-image. The transformation from good to monstrous doesn't occur in a single dramatic moment. More often, it's a gradual process, a series of small, seemingly inconsequential decisions that pave the way for larger transgressions. Think back to your daily routine. Maybe you've taken a pen from the office without asking, or perhaps you've used a neighbor's Wi-Fi without permission. These actions, small as they may seem, are the first steps on a slippery slope. They create a precedent, a belief that minor ethical lapses are acceptable under certain circumstances. Over time, these small choices accumulate, subtly eroding the moral barriers that keep us in check. This incremental process isn't just theoretical. It mirrors the way large-scale atrocities begin, with small violations that, left unchecked, escalate into gross abuses of power. When you allow yourself even a tiny departure from your moral code, you open the door to larger breaches. And before you know it, the once clear line between right and wrong becomes dangerously blurred. In today's world, the internet is a modern playground for this gradual erosion of moral restraint. Behind the anonymity of screens and usernames, many people behave in ways they would never consider in person. The impersonal nature of online interactions can lead to de-individuation, a state where one feels less accountable for their actions. What might start as a casually offensive tweet can spiral into a series of comments that dehumanize others, feeding into a cycle of cruelty that thrives on anonymity. Every time you click post on a harsh comment or share content that marginalizes others, you contribute to a digital culture where empathy is diluted and cruelty finds fertile ground. Recognizing these small lapses is the first step to halting a dangerous progression, a reminder that every online action carries the potential to reshape your moral landscape. The lessons of the past are stark reminders of how easily humanity can slip into darkness when ethical boundaries erode. Consider the case of Ivan Chip Frederick, an all-American figure described as having a decent IQ and a stable mind, who became embroiled in the atrocities at Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. Here, the transformation wasn't due to a pre-existing malevolence, but was the product of extreme circumstances, the stress of war, the dehumanizing conditions of a detention facility, and an environment that tacitly condoned cruelty. Frederick's descent into inhumanity illustrates that under the right or wrong conditions, even those who consider themselves fundamentally decent can become instruments of terror. History offers numerous examples where language and ideology have been used to strip groups of their humanity, making it easier for ordinary people to commit acts of unspeakable violence. Nazi propaganda, for instance, used dehumanizing language to portray Jewish people as vermin, creatures unworthy of compassion. This rhetoric wasn't just about words, it laid the groundwork for the Holocaust. Similarly, during the rape of Nanking, Japanese soldiers were conditioned to view Chinese civilians as subhuman, which facilitated the systematic brutality that followed. When language is used to dehumanize, it creates an environment where the natural barriers of empathy are eroded. It's a tactic that has been employed time and again to justify violence and inhumanity on a massive scale. Perhaps one of the most harrowing examples of the Lucifer Effect is the Jonestown Massacre. In 1978, over 900 followers of cult leader Jim Jones were persuaded to commit mass suicide by drinking cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. This wasn't a scenario where individuals acted out of a desire to kill. It was a chilling case of blind obedience. The followers surrendered their ability to think critically, entrusting their lives completely to a charismatic leader. This tragic event serves as a sobering reminder of how dangerous uncritical loyalty to authority can be. Beyond the historical and experimental, there are deep-seated psychological processes that explain why good people might stray into darkness. De-individuation occurs when people lose their sense of self in a group, leading to a diminished sense of personal accountability. This phenomenon is evident in large crowds, protests, or even online communities where anonymity can lead to behavior that is more aggressive or uncharacteristic of one's usual self. The loss of individuality means that actions become detached from personal morals and ethics. Instead, behavior is guided by the collective impulse, often with disastrous consequences. By contrast, maintaining a strong sense of individual identity can serve as a protective barrier against the influences of de-individuation. Simple acts, like making eye contact or addressing someone by name, can reinforce the recognition of individual humanity, fostering empathy and accountability. The Milgram experiment's unsettling results highlight a fundamental aspect of human behavior: the tendency to obey authority figures even when it conflicts with personal morals. When an individual is placed in a situation where an authority figure directs their actions, the internal moral compass can be silenced by the belief that someone else is responsible for the outcome. This can lead to actions that are drastically out of character. An ordinary person committing acts they might otherwise never consider. The danger here is twofold. First, it absolves individuals of personal responsibility, making it easier for them to justify unethical behavior. Second, it places immense power in the hands of those who command authority, a dynamic that can be exploited to disastrous ends. Throughout history, philosophers have grappled with the dual nature of humanity. From the allegories of Plato to the existential musings of Nietzsche, the idea that every person harbors the potential for both great good and profound evil has been a central theme. Plato's allegory of the cave is a metaphor for human enlightenment, a journey from darkness into light. However, it also reminds us that what we perceive as reality is often just a shadow of the truth. Just as the prisoners in the cave are manipulated by the shadows on the wall, we too can be swayed by the subtle forces of conformity and obedience. The journey towards self-awareness is fraught with challenges, but it is essential if we are to recognize and resist the potential for evil within ourselves. Friedrich Nietzsche's exploration of the will to power offers another perspective on the dark undercurrents of human behavior. Nietzsche argued that the desire for power is a fundamental aspect of human nature, one that can manifest in both creative and destructive ways. When this drive is channeled positively, it can lead to tremendous acts of courage and innovation. But when left unchecked, the same drive can devolve into a ruthless pursuit of domination, a key element in the transformation of a good person into a monster. Ultimately, the philosophical lesson is clear. The potential for both good and evil resides within every individual. Our lives are defined not by a fixed moral identity, but by the sum of our daily choices. Every moment presents an opportunity to reinforce our commitment to empathy and compassion, or conversely, to succumb to the pressures of conformity and blind obedience. Recognizing this duality is the first step toward ensuring that the darker impulses never take root. So, what do you take away from this exploration? First and foremost, awareness. Recognizing the conditions that foster de-individuation, blind obedience, and dehumanization is crucial in safeguarding your own moral integrity. Questioning authority is not a sign of weakness, it is an affirmation of your own moral agency. Whether in the workplace, in political arenas, or even in everyday interactions, challenging the status quo can be a powerful tool against the erosion of individual responsibility. History is replete with examples of individuals who, by standing up to unjust orders, have altered the course of events. Their actions remind us that resistance, however small, can have a profound impact. In a world that often values conformity, maintaining a strong sense of individuality is vital. Recognize that every act of kindness, every moment when you choose empathy over indifference, reinforces the best parts of your character. Whether it's as simple as a friendly gesture or as significant as speaking out against injustice, these choices build a moral foundation that can withstand the pressures of societal influence. Never underestimate the power of words. Euphemistic language designed to obscure harsh realities can lead to moral complacency. Be vigilant in your own language, both in conversation and in the digital sphere. When you challenge dehumanizing rhetoric, you are not only defending the dignity of others, but also reinforcing the standards by which you live. In today's digital age, the anonymity of the internet poses a unique challenge. Every comment, every post, every shared image carries the potential to contribute to a culture of dehumanization. Commit to using your digital platforms as tools for connection rather than division. Advocate for transparency, empathy, and accountability online. Your actions in the digital world can set a powerful example for others. And at the end, I want to say that every moment is a choice. Choose compassion, choose humanity, and let your light triumph over the darkness.